Will the potential mega merger in the airline industry derail passenger airline perks? In today's cover story, currency collapse, how Fed decisions are having a ripple effect around the globe. Plus, why some restaurants are ditching tips, and the new reason to worry about the housing sector. First Business starts now.
You're watching First Business. Financial news, analysis, and today's investment ideas.
Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, August 21st. I'm Angela Miles. In today's first look, the Dow drifts down but hangs on to 15,000. For the fifth session, the Dow ended the day lower. The blue chips lost 8 points. The Nasdaq added 25 and S&P 6. Gold edged up $5 and oil slipped $2.18. In earnings after hours, shares of Analog Devices fell more than 2%, even though the chip maker beat forecasts. And tax software company Intuit met expectations with sales that topped estimates. And ready to hit the road, AAA predicts 34 million Americans will travel this Labor Day weekend, the most since the recession. At the sound of the bell, it's Larry Schober of SFG Alternatives here to talk about this choppy market. Good morning, Larry. It feels like we have hit very volatile days here.
You know, we have. I think it's just summertime. There's lack of liquidity, lack of attendance right now. And let's keep in mind, we have 3 housing numbers coming out the balance of the week. We have PMIs. We have the Fed speaking. So really, the market's just looking for a new impetus to go one way or the other.
Not to mention these retailers reporting in really shake up the market as well. What do you think we'll expect to hear from, say, Target or Lowe's today on the heels of Home Depot yesterday?
Well, let's keep in mind, yesterday, Home Depot, I mean, the bar was set very low given what happened with Walmart and stuff like that. So right now the bar is low, and I think Target's going to beat expectations given that the bar is so low and consumer spending isn't as bad as what we just thought it was even a couple of weeks ago.
Moving now on to the Treasury market, what do you think is likely to happen there? Will we see as much volatility as we now see in stocks?
That's really hard to say. I mean, let's keep in mind that since May, the 10-year has gone up 120 basis points. And at the same period of time, the S&P 500 has gone up 25 points. So right now, the Treasury is finding a home. It's getting used to tapering, the expectations of tapering. And yeah, at some point, we're going to find a home somewhere between 2.5% and 3%.
Larry, thanks as always. Have a good one.
You're welcome.
The plunge in India's currency has become a free fall. The rupee, in case you've forgotten Slumdog Millionaire, has lost 15% of its value against the dollar since May. Our cover story dives in and tries to catch up with the cause of it all. It now takes more than 63 rupees to match a U.S. dollar. 3 months ago, it was 53. Headlines ask, will the slide continue? It's got some half joking that the currency's new symbol includes a slash across its throat. But it may also be the global impact of the Federal Reserve.
What's going on is the U.S. The U.S. and the impact of us tapering, and when we begin that tapering, will have an impact around the world because as the world's largest economy, as we go, other economies often go.
As the Federal Reserve bought bonds, keeping interest rates low in the U.S., a lot of investors took their money to the international bond market. Instead of 2% interest on U.S. Treasuries, you could get 5% in Indonesian bonds and 7% in Indian bonds. Now that the Federal Reserve may taper its bond buying, it may take away some of the incentive that drove investors overseas in the first place. In the anticipation, traders are engaged in a sell-off.
Now with higher interest rates in the U.S. and at the same time the U.S. economy picking up, money becomes what we call quote-unquote hot. Money looks for the best and the safest return, 2 things at one time.
There are other factors tugging at India as well. India's trade with its largest trading partner, China, has slowed as China's economy has cooled from the double-digit growth of only a few years ago, and that has built India's budget deficit. As far as U.S. trade, India is the U.S.'s 13th largest trading partner of goods, slightly ahead of Taiwan. U.S.-India trade represents $58 billion worth of business. But it's not enough to overcome the shortfall that led India's finance minister to ask the people of India to not buy gold because it is imported and paid for in dollars, draining India's foreign exchange reserves. For its part, India's government has raised short-term interest rates and limited Indian companies from overseas investment.
JP Morgan Chase is back in the headlines. This time, the Justice Department is investigating whether the bank manipulated U.S. energy markets. JP Morgan was accused earlier by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission of manipulating energy markets in California and the Midwest. The bank settled by paying $410 million. Now, the Justice Department wants a closer look. According to the Wall Street Journal, JP Morgan responds, "We're working hard to address regulatory concerns." The bank is said to face at least 6 ongoing investigations.
A hedge fund manager who was once a star on Wall Street will be fined and banned from the securities industry. The SEC says Philip Falcone will admit to wrongdoing, be banned from the industry for at least 5 years, and his fund, Harbinger Capital Partners, will pay more than $18 million. The original deal for 2 years and no admission of wrongdoing was reportedly considered too lax by the new SEC chairwoman, Mary Jo White, along with others, and was toughened up.
A disturbing story out of London involves Bank of America. The New York Times reports a 21-year-old intern working at the bank's London office died just 1 week away from completing his internship. Reports say Moritz Earhart was an exchange student at the University of Michigan. He was found unconscious by British police last week. The bank called him a diligent intern with a promising future. Unconfirmed reports say he had epilepsy and pulled 3 all-nighters just before he died.
For-profit educator Career Education will pay $10.25 million to settle a suit brought by New York's Attorney General. The company has been the target of a 2-year investigation and stood accused of inflating its success rate in placing graduates in jobs. $9.2 million of the settlement will go to 5,000 former students. Career Education is one of the largest for-profit college corporations in the country. It operates more than 90 campuses around the world.
The number of teens working summer jobs dropped this season. According to employment trend watchers at Challenger Grand Christmas, 1.4 million young people between the ages of 16 and 19 landed jobs. That's 3% fewer than last summer, when it appeared job growth in the demographic would continue to climb. Instead, the economy slowed and retail sales slumped in May and June, causing stores not to hire additional summer help.
One thing students are increasingly learning: how to not pay so much for textbooks. Textbook prices have jumped more than 80% in the past 10 years, and recent studies show those numbers may be a tipping point. 34% of students report downloading materials from unauthorized sources. That's a jump of almost 15% in just 3 years. Professors also report self-publishing or using free or lower-cost web-based materials.
I found a few teachers tried to be kind of accommodating by Xeroxing copies out of books, but if you didn't have a teacher that did that, you kind of had to go out of your way to do that.
Sometimes I could see if someone else had it, but a lot of times I ended up having to buy it, and I didn't always use it that much.
If I could use the old edition, I would see if any friends had it, but obviously Amazon or Chegg or something like that, just any way to get it a little cheaper.
Students told us they would often share a book or settle for an older edition to save money. On average, they told us they spend upwards of $300 per quarter on textbooks.
The quick rise of home prices in Nevada and Arizona are being closely watched for potential bubble trouble. The states were hit hardest during the housing crisis. Bloomberg reports homes selling in Las Vegas for $499,000 were just half that price 3 months ago. In Phoenix, home prices are up 21% compared to a year ago. Ken Fears, an economist at the National Association of Realtors, says the issue this time could be a case of phantom demand.
What we saw between 2003 and 2006 was a credit bubble. People buying who didn't necessarily or couldn't sustain those mortgages. So again, that was the source of phantom demand. Now the concern is the phantom demand are investors creating phantom demand. So will they, in the next 3 to 5 years, start selling?
Nationwide, home prices are up 12% compared to last year.
The housing recovery helped Home Depot pound out one of its most profitable quarters. The home improvement chain reported earnings and outlook that topped Wall Street's view of the ongoing surge in home sales. Despite nailing its earnings report, the stock fell. Best Buy also topped estimates. That stock soared 13%. JCP reported another big loss, but it was not as bad as investors had feared. That stock rallied, closing a penny above $14.
The chairman of bookseller Barnes & Noble is withdrawing his plan to buy the chain. Leonard Riggio first mentioned plans to acquire the chain's 675 stores back in February. This latest move calls into question the future of the bookstore chain on the heels of dismal earnings and ending production of its own Nook tablet.
Overstock.com tweaks its plan to compete head-to-head with Amazon. Last month, the struggling online discounter announced that it would sell books at least 10% cheaper than Amazon.com's prices. However, Overstock has since altered that offer and will instead match Amazon's book prices permanently.
Regulators are sniffing out investment scams now that medical marijuana is legal in nearly 20 states. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, better known as FINRA, says potential investors are being pitched by fax, email, text, tweets, and infomercials. FINRA warns investors are promised they can double their money with shares of stocks tied to medical marijuana, which may turn into a pump and dump scam. A free way to check if an investment is legit is by going to this website at finra.org to search for broker information and background.
Consider it a high-end trend. The no tipping policy is popping up more and more at posh restaurants, such as Michelin-rated Alinea in Chicago. The restaurant banned tipping in exchange for a service charge, which is then split up amongst the entire staff. The policy may be more accepted at a restaurant where waiters are pulling six-figure salaries. However, not everyone in the service industry is jumping quickly aboard the no-tip train. Anthony Citriglia is a bartender.
Being a server or a bartender, you're a very personable person, and if you make a table feel great, they're probably going to give you more money than I think what my employer would give me off of a flat rate off every single table.
With hourly pay that hovers near minimum wage, Citriglia says he relies on tips, often more than 20% of a diner's bill, to make a living. Alineia's owner tells us the no tipping policy is a legal issue, enabling chefs and servers to be considered professionals by the U.S. government.
Here's the economic calendar for today. It's the MBA Mortgage Index, existing home sales, crude inventories, and the all-important FOMC minutes. On the earnings docket, watch for J.M. Smucker, Hewlett-Packard, Madison Square Garden, Target, American Eagle Outfitters, PetSmart, Staples, and Lowe's. Still to come, weighing in on what the plan to create a mega airline will mean for frequent flyers holding those air miles. Plus, why some home building stocks are catching a second wind. Also, see if you can guess who's the wealthiest congressman on Capitol Hill. The answer after the break.
The annual list of wealthiest lawmakers on Capitol Hill is out, and California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa tops the list by The Hill newspaper. Issa made his money with the Viper car security system, earning around $355 million last year. Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas is noted to have a net worth of $101 million. On the Senate side, Democrat Mark Warner of Virginia has a portfolio worth $88 million, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is reportedly worth $3.9 million.
Signing up for your company's 401k plan is a quick way to build up your own portfolio. But a new survey shows Americans are feeling confused and overwhelmed by the process. We have Dave Gray, head of the 401k client experience at Charles Schwab, on the line with us this morning. Good morning. And why are Americans feeling so much angst about their 401k accounts?
I can understand that, because if you're uncertain as to how to invest, and yet you know that this is your largest or primary source of retirement income, it certainly makes sense that that would cause some stress. One of the key things we found in the survey is that Americans are really accepting responsibility for their retirement future, but the key item here as well is that they're uncertain how to make the most of it. Retirement plans are often more confusing to individuals than health care benefits. And I think what that comes down to is that folks really just need help in their 401k to invest better.
What are some of the best ways for workers to maximize their money savings through 401k?
I think there's really a couple key things to maximize your 401k. And the first thing is save and save more. Essentially, you want to make sure that you're saving at least up to whatever the employer matches in your retirement plan. You don't want to leave any money on the table. Take advantage of that employer match. Another good thing to do in savings is every year increase your savings by 1%. And a great time to do that is when you get a cost of living adjustment from your employer. It makes it such that you don't really miss that additional savings. Yeah. And then the other key idea for maximizing your 401k is take advantage of that professional advice. Have a professional determine your asset allocation for you and manage your retirement account on your behalf. We find that when individuals utilize professional advice, their investing confidence actually doubles than when they're on their own.
While it can be good to speak with a professional, shouldn't investors also consider their own ideas about investing?
I think a great professional advice approach really involves the individual providing input to that professional advice service or the professional advisor about their own retirement goals, their expectations of how they want to live in retirement, and their ability to save at this point in their life. So really it is a cooperative effort. And I think that is one of the best ways for an individual to really own their retirement future.
Thank you for talking with us this morning. That was Dave Gray of Charles Schwab.
Kodak's plan for emerging from bankruptcy has been approved by a federal judge. The iconic photo company's plan means it will now emerge as a new company with a different focus: commercial and packaging printing. Kodak attorney told the court that the company's now very different from the one that introduced generations to home movies, snapshots, and also filed for bankruptcy protection last year.
Coming up, help around the house. Trader plays that could build up your portfolio. That's later on. But first, is there an expiration date on your frequent flyer miles if American and U.S. Air merge? That answer is coming up. The merger of American Airlines and U.S. Air is causing a scare for some frequent flyers. Joining us now via Skype is Chris Lopinto of Expert Flyer. Good morning. And is it true American gets top marks for its frequent flyer program?
Good morning. Great to be here. Yes, that's true. The American Advantage program is not only one of the oldest, but the most favoritive among frequent flyers.
What happens if this deal goes through, this merger happens? Is there any chance that flyers will lose some of their mileage?
Well, no, they definitely won't lose any of the mileage. What will happen is that if the merger goes through, the miles will be retained, and then if someone has a account in both U.S. Airways and American, they'll be combined into one account. What may happen, however, which happens over time in general, is that the miles that are retained are worth less, and you may be able to do less with them depending upon what happens post-merger.
How should passengers prepare? Is there any way to prepare?
Well, the advice that we generally give, and this holds true if there's a merger or not, is don't wait, use your miles now. What happens is that over time there's mile inflation where airlines give out tons of miles, especially through credit card purchases. So there's a lot of miles out there, more miles than ever, chasing fewer frequent flyer seats than ever. So you have this inflation effect. So our advice is always to use miles now when you can, don't wait, because it's going to always get harder over time, and there's going to be, especially if there's merger consolidation, less frequent flyer seats over time is what generally happens.
Well, thanks for making things clearer for us. Thanks for clearing that up for us. It's Chris Lopinto of Expert Flyer.
Thank you.
Still to come, if you've been waiting for the opportunity to buy stocks tied to the housing market recovery, some trader ideas are coming up next in Chart Talk. Tim Bigma of Trading Block joins us now for Chart Talk. Good morning, Tim. And the retailers have been giving investors big clues as to what's going on in the home sector. What do you see in Toll Brothers, which reports earnings today?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen actually Toll Brothers come way off the highs here, almost 20% or so, actually underperforming housing stocks, which certainly have gotten hit here once that tapering talk came on. But right around that 30 level, it bounces off twice back in June and November, looking for the bounce again here. So I kind of like the valuation down around these levels. That 31 level seems to be an attractive level to get long at.
This has been a trader's play, and here's the reason why. We had a big buildup on some of these home building stocks, and then it was too late to get in. Eventually they did come back down though. So is this the second wave?
Absolutely, and I think it highlights, patience does pay off, and chasing, never seems to work out too well. So certainly down around these levels. I like for the stock to head back up around that mid-35 level. Tapering more than factored in my opinion. I don't think interest rates are going to sky high from here, and Toll, being at the upper end, is certainly the most immune to an increase in interest rates as well.
What other stocks in the home building or housing sector do you like, Tim?
Yeah, I kind of like, D.H. Horton around these levels here. That's been beaten up. Certainly that has kind of a more mid-tier kind of exposure there. I would avoid some of the lower-end names. But, overall, I think housing, given the fact that it's really been a big underperformer here, kind of looking attractive to me as a value guy.
Thank you. As always, it's Tim Bigham of Trading Block. Have a good trading day, Tim.
Thank you, Angie.
We've come to the end of the show for today. Coming up tomorrow in Movies and Money, the budget backstory on The Butler and how it could affect all of Hollywood. From all of us at First Business, have a great day, and thank you for watching.